Hey, welcome everybody. My name's there we go. Recording's in progress, just to give you a reminder of that. Hey, I might welcome to our second public meeting about the exciting project of replacing the Tilden Environmental Education Center. My name is Mike Moran. I'm one of the Interpretive and Recreation Services Regional Managers for East Bay Regional Park District, and I happen to have my team at Tilden be in my region. That's why I get to host this one. We are going to be getting some updates on the project, where we stand now, from our team of our staff architect, Jim Devlin, also our architect, EHDD, as well as Aldrich Pears and Associates. Those are our exhibit designers. And CMG, our landscape architect, is going to be giving a presentation as well. We're going to be bringing up a poll in just a minute. We'd like folks to take the time to answer that just while we're letting some more people filter on in. So if you could answer those questions, we're curious as to why you're here, what you're interested in as far as this project goes. What's been your experience at the Tilden Nature Area and the EEC specifically? And you can see that's popping up on the poll now. Folks should be able to see that. Oh, and the first question is, did you attend the first meeting? If you did, thank you very much, and thanks for coming back. And if you did not, welcome to your first meeting, but our second public meeting for the Tilden Environmental Education Center replacement project. And Amanda, are we going to see these answers come up live, or are you going to pull up the results when we're all finished?
So the panelists should be able to see the answers be answered live, and then the attendees will when we end the poll and you review the results.
Great. That sounds great. Okay. And folks do know that we are recording. This will be available, as was our first public meeting, on the district website. We actually have a project page for this project, the Environmental Education Center replacement. And so you could watch the first meeting as well as the second meeting. We really appreciate you folks coming in. I know it's an evening, 6:30. It's 6:30. A lot of stuff going on in people's busy lives, and we really appreciate your input to make this project the best that it can be. We're really looking forward to sharing what we think is some really exciting progress along the way, and we'll give you some ideas of what to expect in the coming months as this project continues. Thanks. And we love to figure out where folks are from too. We know that a lot of people come on up to Tilden Nature Area, Tilden Regional Park, not just from the adjacent communities, but from all over the place. So if you could put in, if you have other, that would be great. But any specificity you want to add is wonderful there. And I know that we have the different age groups too. And you may be in one particular age group. And we know that grandma and papa often bring their kids up to the visitor center, but we'd like to get an idea of who's attending this meeting tonight. Okay. As you go through the questions, the last time you visited the EEC, we got a lot of folks that show up sometimes. A lot of folks are just, it's a regular part of their day. And we realize that and realize how exciting and how tied emotionally folks are to Tilden Nature Area and the EEC. And we're, as said earlier on, we're really excited about bringing you some progress on the replacement project. Okay. We've had some of these questions in our first poll. If you folks attended the first meeting about a month ago, but we did add some new ones too. So if you took the first poll and you think it adds the same bunch of questions, take a closer look, because we did add some questions to get some more information from you. It's really helpful. Any information you can give to us, it really informs our best work to make this project the best that it can be. Right. Very good. I'm saying we've got 26 participants right now. That's great. And we're going to go ahead and keep working on these polls. If you folks can answer that, that's great. And then we'll get into what we're going to be doing for the rest of the evening. We'll lay out the agenda. As I mentioned earlier, we're going to be introducing all the parties making presentations today. We'll have a welcome from Director Elizabeth Eccles, who represents, you can find folks in the Tilden Nature Area sector or ward. And we'll be going for about an hour and a half today. And again, a reminder, we'll probably be saying the same things a lot today. So forgive the repetition, but we are going to be recording the meeting. Okay. Go here. Right. And if you folks keep working on that, those polls, we'll be bringing up um, an agenda in just a couple of minutes to give you kind of a lay of the land of the evening. Let's see. All right. Great. Well, folks, let's go ahead and get started. We're still going to be welcoming some people in here. We really appreciate everybody coming in. And for those of you folks who just are showing up, thanks very much. If you're looking to come to the Tilden Environmental Education Center replacement project public meeting, you made it. This is the second of 3 of our meetings here. We really want to welcome you and thank you all for being here. We are going to be having several different presentations to show you the progress we made up to date about this particular project. And our folks who will be presenting with us will be from Aldrich Pears and Associates, our exhibit designer, EHDD, our architect, and then we also have Jim Devlin, our staff architect. Let's see, okay. And just to get you a little head start here, we are celebrating our 90th birthday at the Park District. We started in 1934, and as you know, we might be celebrating this all year long. And in 34, in the throes of the Depression, people of the East Bay voted to tax themselves to purchase the first parklands of what is now the East Bay Regional Park District. And one of those original purchases, original parklands, became Tilden Regional Park. And since then, people of the East Bay and beyond have really so richly supported and even guided in every way imaginable the mission and vision of the district. And it's to protect, to make accessible all these graces of these lands and experiences for everyone. So all communities of the East Bay and beyond, with an environmental ethic underlying every single thing that we do. So there's a lot to celebrate, but perhaps most of all, when we look back on birthdays, we look back in the past and think about what's happened in the past 90 years. So I think mostly what's exciting about this is what has that 90 years done for us to propel us into the future. And your support, your connection, your stewardship, caring just by reflecting and being here tonight, as that's the future that we're looking forward to. And that's the foundation for a very exciting second century of the Park District. And it's really emblematic of the importance of this time that we are looking at improving and really trying to realize the mission of the Park District through projects like the Tilden Environmental Education Replacement Project. All right. Before we go any further, I'm going to introduce Director Eccles in just a moment. But first, could we please let's acknowledge that the lands currently within the East Bay Regional Park District fall within the ancestral home territories of a diverse and resilient group of indigenous people who are descended from Ohlone, Bay Miwok, and Delta Yokut ancestral tribes. Please join us in honoring with gratitude not only the land itself and the people who have stewarded it since time immemorial and continue to remain connected to it today. Very good. Director Eccles, I think you are on the line here. One of our directors from our board of directors, Director Elizabeth Eccles, will give us a welcome. Director Eccles?
Well, hello, everyone. Can you hear me all? Oh, great. Perfect. Okay. I want to thank you all for being here today. I know it's dinner time and there's a lot going on, but it's really important to us to hear your input and answer your questions. I know that the Tilden Nature Area is a very special place for many of you, certainly a very special place for me. I practically grew up there. I was a junior ranger and enjoyed a lot of time with my 3 siblings down at Tilden Nature and the surrounding areas. And we, as I said, we really want to get this right. And I really appreciate what staff is doing in terms of thinking through the various aspects of what this should be, what it should look like, making sure that it's open and accessible to everyone. And I think you'll enjoy. Some of you may have been at the first workshop, and I think you'll also enjoy hearing from staff and the consultants tonight on this phase 2, the next piece of this puzzle that we're going to present to you. And really hope that you will ask any questions that you have, and appreciate you being here tonight. Welcome.
Thank you, Director Eccles. That's a great start for our program. I just want to make a couple of specific introductions for the folks who are here from the district. We have Amanda Sanders, our Senior Administrative Specialist from over in our Planning GIS Department, Planning Trails and GIS Department. Amanda is really running this program behind the scenes. Assisting her is Eddie Willis, one of our planners. You'll also see that Ren Bates, our Chief of Design and Construction, is with us today. And Jim Devlin, our District Architect, is here. I'm going to be introducing Martha Cerda in just a moment. She'll be giving us a welcome in Spanish, as well as just logistics for folks who would enhance their experience to have Spanish interpretation there. And then Sarah Federley is also on. She's the supervising naturalist from the Tilden Nature Area Environmental Education Center. For the folks who are joining us from our our consultants from EHDD, we have Ryan Metcalf and Chris Patano. From CMG, our landscape architect, we have Lauren Stahl, and APA, our exhibit designer, we have Richard Lean and Alex Noble. All right, Amanda, how are we doing on those on the poll? For folks who just showed up, there should be a poll available. We're trying with a bunch of questions there, really trying to get some input from folks and seeing how we are getting the word out to different folks about this project.
I think we have about 11 people out of the attendees who answered the poll.
Okay.
I think we could probably go ahead and end that and go over the results. That sounds good?
Great. That sounds great. And
Here
then
we go.
Put out, thanks. That's great, Amanda.
Okay, I'm sharing the results now. And Mike, do you want to go ahead and go over that?
Sure. It looks like, well, we just call it says 4 out of 11, but let's just 36% of folks who were at the first meeting are here also. Thank you very much. And for all those of you folks who are coming here for the first time, that's great. We really like to see as many people as possible learning about, finding out about our projects. The support of the community is what allows us to do this. So we really want to make sure that we're getting it right with you. So thanks for showing up and giving us your input. Oh boy, a lot of folks have come to the Tilden Nature Area. A lot of folks are coming once a week, once a month. A couple of folks have been here maybe just a couple of months, 2 to 3 months ago, 4 to 6 months. Nobody, like somebody came here in the last year, more than a year ago too. But we really get an awful lot of folks coming to the Tilden Nature Area on a regular basis. And that in itself is really going to be a helpful bit of information for us as we move forward with this project. One of the main things that bring you to Tilden Visitor Center, it was also called the Environmental Education Center, and maps of information. We got great staff providing information there. The exhibits are very illustrative of what's happening in the watershed of Wildcat Creek. Sarah and her staff put on amazing programs, either formal or informal programs. Of course, restrooms and water. It's a big staging area for folks to take their foray out into the nature area. Their live animals are a big hit too, it looks like. Talking with interpretive staff, just making that connection with what's happening in the park and finding out anything newsy, any information people can get. So that's wonderful. We also know that even though we are on the edge of the urban wildland interface right there, it can be tough for folks to get up into Tilden, and bus service is one of the issues. Benches or resting spots, it looks like there. Wi-Fi or cellular, I think we're working on that. And it looks like those are the things. And some of these other issues, we're talking about access or any barriers. That's to the landscape of the area, not just the building itself. So how do you actually get from the parking lot, get up to the park itself from the parking lot over to the building? So very helpful information there. Thank you. Visitor center entrance is not clearly marked. That's one of the issues we are certainly addressing with this project. And it's great to see that a lot of folks just don't find barriers. They can make their way up there. A lot of different favorite features. We see some of the just to do with the architecture of the current building, the natural looking. We've had it for 50 years. There's been an awful lot of emotional attachment to this building, and that's why we're working really hard to make this new one really fit the bill for a flagship interpretive center for East Bay Regional Park District. The watershed tunnel is a big one for folks. Mountain line sculpture, it's not going anywhere. We're going to keep that one. And the historic map exhibit that came from the original work to get a park district put together back in the early 1930s. So that big historic map exhibit is definitely going to be a part of our ongoing project. That's great. And Amanda, shall I turn it over to you now to talk a little bit more about the logistics of the meeting?
Yes, thank you, Mike.
Thanks.
Again, welcome everybody. We're glad that you're here. I just wanted to go over a few of the webinar features for the meeting tonight. We will be using the question and answer box. If you have any questions that you would like to ask any of the presenters, if you look on your screen, it's on the bottom toolbar. It says Q&A and it has two little speech bubbles above that. You can click on that and then type in any questions that you have. They'll come to all of the panelists and we will answer them one of two ways. We can either answer it live. We'll be doing a brief pause after each presentation, or if it's an answer that somebody knows off the top of their head, we can go ahead and type it in, and then everybody will be able to see the the question and the answer once that's happened. There is the chat feature available. As attendees, you can chat with the hosts and the panelists. Obviously, if somebody is in the middle of presenting, they're not going to be able to respond directly back to you. So we really would prefer that you send the messages over through the question and answer, but that is an option for you. And just so you know, we won't be taking live questions during the presentation. And the reason for that is because we have had some disruptive behaviors on other public meetings, and we're trying to keep that to a minimum. But we do want to hear your feedback. You can also put comments that you have into the question and answers in case, you just want to say, like, I really liked this certain feature on this design, that sort of thing. If we don't get to all of the questions, we will answer them and post it onto the project webpage. We will be at the end of the presentation. There'll be both a QR link that you can scan to go directly to the project webpage, and also the website name spelled out for you. So thank you very much.
That's great. Thanks for setting us up, Amanda. Folks, we really want you to take advantage of these opportunities for feedback. So please use the features that Amanda was speaking of. And again, if you're thinking of questions afterwards, you've gotten home from a busy day of work or whatever, and the question pops in after we're done, please put it into an email or the responding methodology that we have on that page on the district website. We really want to get input. Also, to let you know that over at the EEC presently, there are there's a little display about this particular project, and staff will be happy to talk to you about it. If you happen to be in there, have some of the drawings up, some of the sketches and things like that, to get you a little more informed about this project that could help inform your questions and comments and input going forward. I'd like to introduce Martha Cerda. Martha is very kindly joining us tonight to provide any assistance she might with Spanish-speaking folks. Martha, would you like to introduce yourself?
Thank you, Mike. Gracias. Buenas noches a todos y bienvenidos. Me llamo Marta Cerda y soy naturalista con el Distrito de Parques Regional del Este de la Bahía en Tilden Nature Area. Esta es la segunda de 3 reuniones comunitarias para aprender sobre el proyecto de sustitución del Centro de Educación Medioambiental de Tilden Nature Area y También parte de hoy vamos a hablar sobre el progreso del proyecto. Estoy aquí para traducir cualquier pregunta que puedan tener en español. La presentación no va a estar traducida, pero pueden hacer sus preguntas en español en la sección de Q&A y estaré respondiendo ahí. También me pueden mandar sus preguntas en la opción del chat y les contesto ahí. Muchas gracias por estar aquí y por su participación. Como todos han dicho, es muy importante para nosotros que creamos un espacio donde todas sus voces y sus opiniones sean reflexionadas en este proyecto. Un recordatorio que esta reunión está siendo grabada y estará disponible en nuestro sitio web después de esta junta. Una vez más, bienvenidos y muchas gracias por estar aquí.
Great. Thank you so much, Martha. And folks, if anybody's not had a chance to meet Martha, she's our newest, I think, naturalist up at Tilden Nature Area. I strongly suggest when you find yourself up there to come on in, get a chance to say hi to Martha, join on one of her programs and any of the other staff too. Well, we're really happy to have Martha part of this exciting Tilden EEC team. Thanks again, Martha. All right. So folks, you can see that we've just gone through the meeting introduction. We're getting towards the project overview. Just to kind of get a lay of the land, our district architect, Jim Devlin, is going to give you a project overview to kind of put things into perspective. Jim, you want to take over?
Yes, thanks, Mike.
Thanks.
So I'm going to give you a quick overview of the project. The district's objective for this project is to replace the existing Tilden Environmental Education Center facility and its associated exhibits with a new facility. And the goals for the district are to, one, create a building complex that's fully integrated with its surrounding natural and cultural landscape. It's also to create a state-of-the-art education and exhibit experience that's inviting and accessible to all the public, and a facility that reflects the district's commitment to sustainable and resilient design practices. For some of you who may not be familiar with the project, the photo in the center is the Tilden EEC, our Environmental Education Center. That is the building that we will be replacing. Up in the upper left-hand corner is an aerial photo of the site. The building with numerous pie shapes is the EEC. And over here is this existing security residence. Once again, the security residence and the Tilden EEC will be torn down and replaced. The new building will be recreated in this approximate same location in order to minimize impact to the surrounding natural environment. To your left here is the Tilden Little Farm, picture of it down below here. Just want to be clear that the Tilden Little Farm will not be impacted by this project. It will not be torn down, and it is going to remain as is. The location of the project is in the unincorporated Contra Costa County. It's sited at the Tilden Nature Area, which is just south of Wildcat Regional Park and just north of Tilden Regional Park. The facility is located in a canyon in the East Bay Hills that's just adjacent to the communities of Kensington and Berkeley. Here, I'm going to give you a little update on just the status of the project. Portions of the project that have been completed to date is the feasibility study that we went into much more detail in the first community meeting. And if you're curious about that, you can visit our website. We have a video of that first community meeting. We also contracted our design consultants, the architectural design team of EHDD and CMG Landscape. We've also contracted with our exhibit designers, Aldrich Pear and Associates. We completed the pre-design phase for the building and site, which included doing a building program, determining the size of the project, and studying existing conditions out there. We also completed the pre-design phase for the exhibit design. We've been doing the exhibit design and the building design simultaneously in order that they inform each other. And then finally, we completed recently the community meeting #1 and the on-site exhibit of the pre-design phase. And once again, those on-site exhibits can be found at the Tilden EEC in its lobby area. Currently in process right now is the schematic design phase. And during that phase, we're developing 3 building site plan options that we'll share with you tonight. We're also in the process of developing the exhibit designs. Also in process is the meeting we're attending right now, the community meeting #2, based on the project design options. And coming up shortly at the Rotunda at the EEC will be an on-site exhibit that sort of covers what we cover at this meeting. The next steps for this project is to complete the schematic design phase, and that includes selecting the preferred design option of the 3 options, developing that preferred design option, and then developing the exhibit design in sync with the development of that final design, which will be followed by a community meeting #3, where we'll present the design progress and status of the project and have another on-site exhibit at the Tilden EEC Rotunda lobby. And with that, I believe I'm passing it back to Mike. Mike, I think you're muted.
You would think that after all these years, oh well, some things just never change. Hey, I just wanted to give you an idea of just the context. Tilden Nature Area is really near and dear to so many people throughout the history of the Park District, to really get an idea that this visitor center that we're planning and building is within this nature area, and it's really where we want the gathering point, that nexus for folks to get the most out of this place. And when we are thinking about the Tilden Nature Area, we use words like wonderful, or it's wonder-filled. It's this place that's affording generations of people from the East Bay and beyond to connect to this park, to their park, and it's really in their backyard. And from the EEC, the staff provides countless activities, from drop-in programs. I mentioned some of this a little bit early on. Drop-in programs the weekend, impromptu interactions, guided hikes, experiences throughout the nature area, and really, perhaps most importantly, hundreds of school programs that reach thousands of kids, of young scholars from this incredibly and increasingly diverse communities of the East Bay and beyond. The fact that this facility is truly in the backyard of the East Bay at the urban wildland interface means that it's the first such experience of its type for countless people, and it impacts them so many different ways. Deep appreciation, joy, stewardship for our parks, the outdoors, and the environment of the district, the East Bay, and beyond. And people come back time and again, as you saw in the poll results. And this is what drives the interpretive team at Tilden Nature Area, supervising naturals Sarah Federley and her outstanding crew. And the folks that you will meet tonight, our contractors, our consultants of APA and HDD and CMG, they are all keenly tuned in to the importance and magic of this place. Our board of directors is also keenly aware, very aware of the magic and the power and the tradition, and perhaps most importantly, the potential of this park. And so with great care and consideration, the board has given us the big charge to maximize that potential, the opportunities for future generations to be touched by, connect with this place through a new EEC, a new environmental education center, a visitor center that gathers up all the invaluable lessons of the EEC's 50 years, and there are a lot of them, blending those with the lessons and these extraordinary benefits of state-of-the-art facilities, exhibits, and techniques that dramatically increase access, connection, inclusion, and interpretation. And that meets our district and department missions and the trust of the public that make the district what it is, all the while protecting and enhancing this thing that is the Tilden nature area. So importantly, as we always have, we need your input to allow this project to realize its potential and the benefits for all of our communities. So to do this, as Jim mentioned, we conducted a rigorous solicitation and review of top architectural and exhibit design firms, and are really delighted to share their work to date to help you guide this project. Our first presentation is going to be from Aldrich Pears and Associates, Richard Lean and Alex Noble. Their team has been working very closely with Sarah's crew and some of the rest of us too, the district staff, come up with some really innovative ways of maximizing the interpretive potential at Tilden Nature Area. So Richard and Alex, can I turn it over to you?
Absolutely.
Thanks so much.
Thank you, Mike. Just want to say welcome and thank you for attending. My name is Richard Lean. I'm a partner with Aldrich Pears Associates. Aldrich Pears Associates is an interpretive planning and exhibit design firm. Been around for roughly 35 years. Worked on projects all over the world, and we're absolutely delighted to be involved in this project. It's a very special place and an amazing group of people that are intimately connected with it. The team at East Bay Regional Park District, the folks at the nature area, and the Tilden EEC, absolutely fantastic group of people. You know, my role, I'm an exhibit designer. I'm a project manager, and joined this evening by my colleague Alex Noble, and Alex is an associate with Aldrich Pears. Alex is an interpretive planner and an exhibit developer. And this evening, Alex is going to share some aspects of our preliminary interpretive planning work that has been developed in collaboration with that great group of people at the Sarah's team of naturalists at the EEC, and of course this great project team with the regional park district. So Alex is going to be talking a little bit about themes and sub-themes, which we've got on screen. Our section to be a little bit brief, content relationships diagram, and then adjacencies starts to talk about exhibit content and its connection to the site. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Alex. There you go, Alex.
Thanks, Richard. Hi, everybody. Nice to see everyone tonight. Yeah, as Richard noted, the exhibit design is well underway, and we've been working closely to work through the big ideas, the key stories, and the connections between them, and to start thinking about the visitor journey. What will people experience at the new visitor center? At this point, we're using diagrams to illustrate these relationships, the adjacencies of content and experience. I'm going to talk you through 3 of those diagrams tonight. The starting point for interpretive design is to define the big idea. If visitors take away one thing when they leave, what will that be? And then what are the other key points that support that big idea? Collectively, these ideas are the foundation on which all the exhibits are created. So this slide captures that framework of ideas. The big idea, here called the overarching theme for the new visitor center, is the dynamic Wildcat Creek watershed embodies dramatic changes that define the landscapes, the values, and the natural and cultural ecosystem of the bay. Other ideas or sub-themes support and expand on that overarching theme. I'm going to read through them just because they might be hard to see on screen. The first one is, through time, the watershed has been a source of sustenance, a commercial water supply, grazing land, a eucalyptus plantation, a flood hazard, and a place of refuge and recreation. The second sub-theme is, plants and animals reveal their roles and relationships within our changing ecosystem. The third one is, Wildcat Creek carves and shapes the land and provides rich and varied habitat for many plant and animal species. And the final one is, people have a role to play in the health of this ecosystem from personal to policy levels. So together, all of these sub-themes and themes are touchstones for the exhibit design. They capture what's special and important about Tilden Nature Area. We'll revisit them again and again as we move forward in the project. And all of these were developed by working closely with the naturalists at the Tilden Nature Area. Okay, we can go to the next slide. So this is our second diagram. This one covers content relationships. So we're trying to put a visual representation of our understanding of how all the topics covered by the themes and sub-themes nest together. At the heart of the story is this place, an eddy or a water body nestled in the heart of Tilden nature area. We can explore the plant and animal communities that live in this water body and how it sustains them. It's an opportunity to get really up close with this one specific ecosystem. Then we move outwards, looking at the broader nature area. Which communities live here? Which species can we get to know? How do people interact with and impact this place? Looking a little bit at a broader context, we look at the larger Wildcat Creek watershed. How does the watershed support wildlife? How does it support migration? What do we see along the creek's path? What are the connections between the headwaters and the bay? And how do people work together across the watershed to support natural communities? And the biggest picture context here shown in yellow is the park district. This gives us an opportunity to explore how humans have chosen to interact with land in this region and invite visitors in to really think about the meaning and impact of our choices today. Running through these concentric connected stories, you'll see these red threads. These are recurring opportunities to encourage visitors to view the watershed from different perspectives, to look at the watershed as a naturalist, or to look at the watershed from an Ohlone worldview perspective, to look at it as a conservationist, or to look at the watershed from the perspective of a particular animal or a plant species. We can go to the next slide, Jen. Thank you. This diagram looks not at content relationships, but it looks more at physical relationships. We've started to look at stages of the visitor journey. So what is the sequence of experiences during a visit to the new center? If we start from left to right, it shows those stages: arrival at the site, there's decompression before you get to the visitor center, there's reception and welcome, and then orientation. Then we have our interpretation. That's our core exhibit experience that invites visitors to connect, to touch, explore, reflect, and play. When we started to look at this sequence and what it means for physical planning, it became clear that this experiential journey needs to be tightly integrated with the special and unique site. So you can see around the edge, we've got these arrows and these yellow circles. Those are indoor-outdoor connections. So either views or physical connections that we can take advantage of as we develop the interpretive exhibits and as we mesh our work closely with the architecture and landscape design. I think I'm going to leave it there, but can leave it open for questions about these diagrams. Thanks.
I would just like to remind all of the attendees, if you happen to have questions during the presentations, please go ahead and use the question and answer box that's down on the bottom of your screen. On the bottom toolbar, it says Q&A. You can just click on that and type in any questions, and we can pause after each presentation to address those questions. Thank you.
That's great. Thanks, Amanda. That's clarifying. And thanks, Alex and Richard. Folks, this is a great behind the scenes view of how we actually go about developing interpretive programs, and our programming being not just what we do out in the field, but really importantly for this project, what we do in the exhibits and how that's going to really catalyze that connection for folks who are just passing through, they're on a school program, heading out into the field. So if you have any questions about this at all, any comments? We got one very helpful comment about incorporating indigenous stories and indigenous sensibilities into our exhibits. We're working on that, but it's great to know that people have those thought processes. Anything is popping into your mind, might be popping into somebody else's. And if it's not, it's even more important that we know about it because we need those unique and individual thoughts. So folks could have any questions, any comments, please have at it. And Amanda, when you get those, if you see any, that would be great. Okay. We'll give it a minute or two if folks have one. Sorry, one may have popped up. I'll read this one. Let me see. Would you please comment on this as a long inhabited wildland and how that informs the interpretive and site development framework? Neither wilderness nor urban, but a combination of both. That is from John Roberts. Thanks so much, John. Thanks for coming out tonight too and seeing this. This is pretty much at the core. You know, Tilden being on the edge of the urban East Bay and the wild East Bay, these things really need to be incorporated on a kind of a gradation or a spectrum. And our partners over at APA have done a really great job of incorporating these ideas. The experiences of the staff at EEC have informed all these diagrams, which will inform and address the question that you had there. I hope that answers your question. And if it does or doesn't, if I'm on the right track, great. If I'm on the wrong track, please come back on and set me straight. That's great. Okay, anybody else? And folks, again, know if you have any questions that you'd like to add later on, you could do so at the our district website at this project page. And if you want to find out some answers to questions that maybe we didn't get to today, but were submitted, they will also be on the project website. Right. Any other questions, folks? If not, and you could go ahead and keep putting those questions in, even if we're moving on to a different presentation, keep putting your questions in about anything that we're talking about tonight, anything that we're not connecting with that you think we should, like Mr. Roberts' question right there. Great. And Alex and Richard, that could be the end of your presentation?
Yeah, I think so. Just, you know, we do have the one question in the chat. I'm just going to say we have the one question in the chat from David regarding the main theme.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, just saying, you know, the Native American story is, you know, an important thread throughout. So we'll keep an eye on that as we continue developing the kind of the foundation of the exhibit program. But that's a great comment. So thank you.
Great. Thanks, David. My apologies if I passed that over. Okay. Great. All righty. So we'll move on to our next presentation. Our consulting architects, EHDD, you know, with APA, they've really told you how we go about developing an interpretive plan for our exhibits that are really going to maximize the potential of the EEC and honor the history of the EEC. Our architects at EHDD are experts at pulling together that sensibility, all those exhibits, and the way people use the built environment. And it's also a nice illustration that the Environmental Education Center at Tilden is not just the naturalists. We also have the little farm. A lot of you folks probably know Farmer Stanley and have had long and storied relationships with him. Our buildings and grounds aide, Larry Christensen, and our ranger, Matt Mosen, all these folks are integral in putting together the everyday operation of the EEC, and that is also part of the job of EHDD, which is why we're so happy to have them as our consulting architects. So can I turn that over to Chris and Ryan?
Thanks, Mike.
Sure.
Yeah, so I'm picking up on Mike's excellent introduction there. My name is Chris Patano. I'm a partner at EHDD, and I am the principal in charge for this project. I'm just going to touch on the overall context and goals for the architecture, and then we'll turn it over to our project manager, Ryan. Will go through 3 options that we've been working with the East Bay team, with APA and with CMG to develop. You know, really when you're designing a visitor center or an environmental education center, you want to create those moments of wonder. You want to have those aha moments. And we have found that those occur when you closely connect and you weave together the interpretive experience with Richard and his team, the landscape experience with Lauren and with Willett and CMG, and the architecture. So it is a cohesive visitor experience. And so that really touches on our overarching goal and the first item on the page here with this integrated. So we want the building and we want the experience to be integrated with the Tilden nature area. But as I mentioned, it's takes all three of the consultants on this team to think about that complete visitor experience to really bring out all the potential of the Tilden nature area. As part of that, we will be, designing the site and the building and the interpretive exhibits to welcome all visitors. And we want to make sure that we have a more direct connection to the little farm and to other park trails. And also we've spent a lot of time discussing the connection to the parking lot and how you actually access the site and what you see. And you'll see a little bit more of that later with the landscape schemes. And then a very utilitarian but important part of the integrated concept is the consolidating of the service areas as well. So for East Bay staff, for the residents, for the visitors to the site. Next is one of our overarching goals is we really are focused on creating an inviting and accessible experience at Tilden Nature with the new EEC visitor center. So we want to have that visual connection that you see. You see clear paths to travel as you come into the site. We want that visitor experience and those options to be clearly understood and readily accessible. And when we use the word accessible, we want this very special place to be accessible to everybody. So we're working very hard, not only to make pathways and make the build, like right now, if you know the building, one of its fatal flaws is levels, multiple levels. So of course, we're designing a building that's all on one level. The site will all have accessible pathways and will really create a very welcoming experience both inside and outside the building. Finally, we're really focused, and one of our expertise is the sustainability. So we want the building to be sustainable and resilient. Mike has touched on the urban wildland interface, and that's actually a fire code that we'll be dealing with as well to ensure that we design a building that sets an example for how to build in these types of environments. We also are committed and working with East Bay to define the building performance. We're focused on low energy use, material reuse, finding locally sourced materials, and incorporating daylighting so that we don't have to use electric lights in many parts of the building. And that we feel will certainly enhance the visitor experience throughout the entire site. All of this is wrapped around, setting the stage for the next 50 years. And as Ryan goes through the options, we just want you to think about what is this building going to feel like? And they're two-dimensional plans, but you'll start to see the organization. Previously, we showed programmatic relationships, and if you want to go back and look at that presentation, you can. But now we're looking at actual building plans that are early in their development, but you'll be able to see and I think get a good feel for how each of these different options will operate and function. So with that, I'll turn it over to Ryan. Thank you.
Thanks, Chris. And hi, everyone. It's nice to have you this evening. My name is Ryan Metcalf. I'm an associate and architect with EHDD and a happy visitor to the Tilden Nature area. If we could advance to the next slide. So all of those goals that Chris just mentioned are central to each of the three schemes that we have generated alongside our design team partners and alongside the district. But before jumping into those ideas for a new EEC, it's worthwhile to situate ourselves and take a look at the existing conditions. As I'm sure many of you are well aware, the EEC is located at the center of a clearing surrounded on three sides by a series of trails and service paths. And to the east, there's an open meadow and trails leading up into the hills. And there's the security residence and staff parking adjacent to the EEC down there. And most visitors arrive at the EEC via the parking lot and then cross Wildcat Creek and continue along pathways that lead further into the Tilden Nature Area or up to the Little Farm or straight into the EEC. And the entrance of the existing EEC, which is shown here with a red arrow, is oriented toward the pathway from the parking lot, but it is turned away from the rest of the site, including Little Farm. The EEC is a well-loved resource and provides a delightful interior space at the central rotunda. But some of the issues facing the existing EEC are that it does not meet current accessibility and building codes. There's the aforementioned entrance that is not easily apparent for visitors from the Little Farm. And the building's geometry creates these intriguing but wedge-like rooms that can lack flexibility, and there's a lack of daylight and views into the site from within the EEC. So now we'll take a look at the 3 architectural schemes that have emerged for the new EEC. If you could click next, Jim. Just to kind of set the stage, these plans show the arrangement and relationships of important spaces that will be provided within this project. So that includes space for exhibits, for public gathering spaces, including a classroom and an auditorium, public restrooms, and staff and support spaces. And the project also maintains the security residence that we've mentioned before. So this first scheme, to jump in, scheme number 1, we've coined it the Eddy scheme. So the scheme provides a generous public space upon entry, again marked by that little red arrow. Smaller indoor and outdoor areas of similar size are provided at either side of the large central space. And this allows visitors to circulate around and back, in and out, not unlike eddies in a stream. The EEC entrance is oriented to welcome visitors arriving from the parking lot, as well as visitors coming from the Little Farm. So that entrance has been slightly reoriented from the existing location. The exhibit spaces within the space, this will be a zone to provide a framework for the exhibit content that was effectively described earlier this evening by our friends at APA. And we're showing these kind of 3 distinct zones that would be the result of some of these stories that are being told in terms of the interpretive story. So here we're showing areas for watershed stories, which are oriented toward the creek, forest and meadow space, which would be oriented towards the forest and meadow, and an area that is called reflect, which might be a space for reflection and maybe some more quiet contemplative experiences. These exhibit zones are shown with some distinct spaces, but they may also extend into the central public space and outdoor areas nearby. The administrative areas are located at the rear of the EEC, and that cluster is adjacent to a service yard that is accessed by the service route along the northern edge of the site. And again, the security residence that is shown in its existing location, so it may be renovated in place and not replaced in a new location, perhaps. One of the assets of this scheme is that the non-exhibit public spaces, that being the restrooms, the classroom, and the auditorium, are located nearest the entrance, which might allow for the separation of those functions from the exhibit areas if necessary. A drawback is that the reception desk is located rather far back in the exhibit space and also less connected to the administrative areas at the same time. And the combination of the open central space and the discrete exhibit zones may allow for some nice flexibility and variety of exhibit scales and formats. But of course, acoustics and daylight in a large area will need to be carefully considered. If we could jump to the next. Thank you. So this scheme 2, we're calling the branch scheme. So this scheme provides more distinct experiences within the public areas. Linear zones extend off a central axis and are oriented specifically to natural features around the site. So similar to the last scheme, the entrance relationship to the site approach and to Little Farm is fairly similar. And also the administrative relationship to the service area is similar to the scheme we just reviewed. For the exhibit spaces, again, there are these three long, distinct, almost branch-like areas that are provided for the interpretive themes. Again, the watershed oriented toward the creek, the forest and meadow stories being located near that site element, and the reflect zone, an offshoot in the middle there. These zones are of a consistent width and run along an east-west axis, which intersects with the main northwest axis, which includes the entrance, the restrooms, and the administrative spaces. The other public spaces, the classroom and the auditorium, are adjacent to the exhibit branches, and they're both located on the southern side, near the entrance. And the security residence, again, is shown in the existing location. One of the assets of this scheme is that the exhibit areas may be very fine-tuned to their context with outdoor connections associated. And there would likely be very good visibility of the exhibits from the reception area. And the geometry provided may allow for some interesting gathering spaces, both at the interior and the exterior. A drawback may be that the exhibit areas provide less flexibility than other schemes. So they may not accommodate certain large-scale exhibits that may come along. And classes may need to circulate through the exhibit areas to reach their specific classroom, although exterior access is also possible. And then the third of three.
Next slide.
Yes, please. Yeah. So this third scheme, we've actually struggled with a name for this one, but we're calling it the cluster scheme. And this scheme provides a large contiguous open space for visitors and exhibits. The remaining visitor EEC areas are clustered together around the edges to help define the main exhibit space. Again, similar with the other schemes, the entrance relationship to the site approach and to Little Farm is fairly similar, and the administrative cluster is similarly located near the service area. So the entrance of the EEC in this cluster scheme is flanked by the auditorium block and the restroom block. And the classroom and the shop here are shown integrated into the larger administrative block right there. As for the exhibit spaces, there's one generous exhibit space with subzones focused on the three interpretive themes. And outdoor connections are provided both at the west side towards the forest, the meadow, and the west side, sorry, the east side toward the forest and the meadow, and the west side toward the creek. In this scheme, the security residence is shown renovated in a new location, given the extent of the site and the location of the EEC. One of the assets of this scheme is that the large exhibit space offers probably the most flexibility for exhibits of all scales. And the reception and the animal support spaces relate fairly well to their respective areas. A drawback is that it may be tricky to separate the exhibit zones it may be tricky to separate the exhibit zones from the general EEC entrance and some of the classroom spaces that are provided. And acoustics and daylight, again, will be something to consider, especially when you have a large area provided. So that kind of takes us through the three architectural schemes in the context of the existing EEC as well. I'd be happy to hand it over to the landscape portion, but I imagine we may want to pause here for a second.
That's a great idea, Ryan. Thank you. And thanks, Chris, too. Folks, if you have any questions or comments about the three different architectural schemes, we'd love to see them. I know that when things are conceptual like this, it might be hard to visualize, but just through Ryan and Chris's explanations, hopefully that gave you some of the reasoning and rationale behind some of these different concepts. If it might be helpful just to imagine yourself walking into the EEC, anticipating a particular experience, how would these different architectural schemes suit your needs, suit your desires here. And I'm going to, pardon my eyes glancing all around the screen. I want to make sure that we catch any questions that might pop up.
I don't see any questions in the question and answer box currently, Mike.
Okay, okay, great. Okay, shall I turn over to Chris and Ryan, or you want to introduce Lauren and we'll go to the next phase of our presentations?
Sure, I can take over.
Thanks, Lauren.
Hi, I am Lauren Stahl. I am from CMG Landscape Architecture, and we are very excited to be working on the landscape design for the new Environmental Education Center. The overarching landscape goals are to improve site access. So we really want to ensure that that the site is usable for all types of different visitors who may come. We'd like to add more native planting, both as a teaching tool for the naturalists at the EEC and to increase the habitat value for birds and pollinators and plants in the area. And then we also want to make sure that the site is integrated with the architecture and the exhibit design so that the experience it flows together and that it all enhances each other. In this first phase of design, we really studied various ways of entering the site and organizational structures for the landscape. You'll see different landscape schemes paired with each of the architectural schemes that Ryan just went through, but those landscape plans could be mixed and matched with any of the different architectural schemes. And so, we're showing them one way, but I'll give an example of how those could be mixed and matched at the end. As you may know, if you visited, the site is quite hilly. So currently people walk up about 12 feet from the low point on the pedestrian path to the Environmental Education Center, and then up another 6 feet to either the trails behind the center or the little farm. And so these preliminary options are really focused around site access and different ways of negotiating that change in elevation. So this first scheme that you see, we're calling Scheme A. We realized in studying the site that the parking lot and the new Environmental Education Center are actually at a pretty similar level, but the existing path and roadways dip down to a low point. So rather than making people walk, downhill to walk back up to the Environmental Education Center, we're considering adding a new bridge as the most direct way to access the new Environmental Education Center. In any of the schemes, you'll see the existing roundabout will actually need to be rebuilt. It does not currently meet ADA code, so it's a little too steep. So we'll have to rebuild that to make it more flat. And then in this scheme, we're showing a new sidewalk that wraps around that roundabout, and then there will be new retaining walls needed to help, hold the grade for that sidewalk. Visitors going to the Pack Rat Trails or to Jewel Lake would continue to use the access road. But everybody else in this scheme would cross the pedestrian bridge up to the new Environmental Education Center or to the little farm. The existing pedestrian path that is actually parallel to the existing road, and on this plan, it would be between the bridge and the road, that could actually be removed since it would no longer be used. And so that area could be replanted. And then potentially more of the creek could actually be daylit in this scheme, which would be beneficial for the habitat. Up top by the Environmental Education Center, there is a large plaza that wraps around the kind of south and east side of the building, and then separate lawn spaces above and below the Environmental Education Center so that groups or classes can kind of spread out within the landscape. You'll see in all of these options that there are several outdoor classrooms around the site. Those would be small gathering or seating areas where the naturalists could teach visiting schools or other groups. They said they often have, up to 6 classes at a time visiting the site. And we imagine that each of these areas will be slightly different and may include interpretive exhibits. And, many of the themes that Aldrich Pears presented earlier would be present both inside the Environmental Education Center and out in the landscape. Of all the options we're showing, this one is probably the most complicated since the bridge, will be somewhat complicated from a construction and regulatory standpoint. So that will require some additional study just to make around the feasibility of it. But it's something that we're looking into. Next. So Scheme B, this option has one access point that leads all visitors to any of the nearby destinations. So everyone going to the trails, the Environmental Education Center, or the little farm would all use the same pathway. This option is the most streamlined and simple for the visitors. It also has the least paving, which is an advantage from a sustainability standpoint, since it involves the least material use and the least impervious surface for rainwater runoff. Again, the roundabout would need to be rebuilt to meet code, and also the road would need to be rebuilt as well, since it would need to meet accessibility code. Let's see, like the first option, the secondary pedestrian path could also be removed in this area, in this option, and that area could be planted, and potentially the creek could be daylit as well. From the main pathway, there's one main path that would then lead up to the Environmental Education Center and farm, and then secondary paths would lead out to the different outdoor classrooms and spaces in the landscape. And then in this scheme, the plaza and lawn spaces are concentrated in front of the Environmental Education Center at the front entry. And so they could be a shared gathering space for visitors to both the Environmental Education Center and to the Little Farm. Next. So scheme C, this option is the most similar to the existing site, with a pedestrian route shown parallel to the access road in its current location, and then a separate vehicular drive. This existing layout could result in some of the same confusion that we've heard around site access, but we could use new paving types to emphasize the main route up to the EEC for visitors. And again, the roundabout and pedestrian path would need to be rebuilt to meet current ADA code. And then the road would require some minimal regrading in this scheme as well. Visitors to Jewel Lake or the trails would still walk down the road, but most visitors in this scheme would use that new rebuilt pedestrian path. There is, again, one main pathway that would lead up to the EEC. It's in both the previous scheme and this scheme, they were kind of winding paths, since we need some switchbacks to get up that grade change that I mentioned earlier. And onto the Little Farm. And then there would be secondary paths that lead around to the other parts of the landscape. In this exhibit, or in this example, we're building on the exhibits on the inside, how there's one main gathering space inside. We're creating a new plaza and lawn space adjacent to those to create kind of one large indoor-outdoor gathering center for the environmental center. And then we're also showing in this scheme a small amphitheater sited at the high point, which could be a destination and a viewpoint at the top of the site. Next. So as an example of how the various access strategies could be paired with each of the architectural schemes, we're showing landscape scheme A with the new bridge and the loops with all three of the architectural options. You'll see that the form of the loops varies a bit depending on the form of the architecture, but the same principles of access and the way that you kind of get around the landscape are similar in each of them. And the same could apply to the other landscape schemes. We would be able to kind of do versions of each of them paired with whatever architecture is preferred. And then next. Oh, next. And finally, for the landscape planting, the actual planting palettes will be developed in coordination with naturalists from Tilden Nature Area, and the planting will feature native plants and highlight the various ecosystems found in the park. We identified several planting types you can see on the screen based on the existing conditions and planting that's currently there. So there's riparian planting, redwood planting areas, pollinator planting, meadow, and then native oaks. And these different planting areas could be used as teaching elements or learning landscapes by the Environmental Education Center staff. And this organization of the planting will be similar, or would be consistent among the different landscape schemes. So we're showing it with scheme A here, but again, this could be applied to the other landscape options that we showed. Starting at the bottom of the site by the creek, any areas of disturbance around the creek would be replanted with appropriate riparian or riverbank species. The areas on the lower end of the site around the existing redwoods would be enhanced with ferns and other understory species that are associated with redwoods. The entry area between the Environmental Education Center and the Little Farm, we're imagining that as an area for a pollinator garden. Those are species like hummingbirds and butterflies that are important both for our native landscapes and for our agricultural landscapes. And then around the lawns and plazas or other gathering areas, we could plant larger no-mow lawns or meadows to kind of create larger clearings or gathering spaces. And then we would like to add some native oaks to the site, obviously being mindful of offsets for the building for fire safety, but we would, they're important kind of species in our native landscapes. Additionally, the Environmental Education Center teaches courses about Native American lifeways. So we would be taking species from those courses and planting them around the site, either in a concentrated area or potentially with their various ecotypes around the site. So I think that's it for the landscape. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions that may have come up.
Great. Thanks so much, Lauren. Let me see. I see one question here. Will staff from our Botanic Garden also be called on for advice in native plantings? Terrific additional resource. Thanks very much for that question, Eleanor. Yes, we're working back and forth with all the different resources that we have in the district. And our botanical garden, if any folks haven't been there, quick plug in Botanic Garden, wonderful place to see, one of the greatest examples of all different plant communities throughout California. And their staff is always very helpful. So that's one of the resources that we could certainly use. And did anybody have any other questions about the landscaping? I think, was it Robin? Robin, I thought I was typing a question to you, and sorry, I got a bum hand here, and I may have just deleted my answer. I'm not sure. If you have that question has not been answered, could you go ahead and retype it? Or if anybody else has anything.
Was it, there was one question from Robin that said, I would hope that any new landscaping would be exclusively California native plants.
Okay, so I think I did answer that one. And
You did.
Lauren, could you speak anything more to that, please?
Yes, I think the goal would be to use California native plants in the landscape.
That's great. That's great. Tilden Park is dominated by eucalyptus, and it's part of the long story of Tilden. So it's a dynamic vegetative story, shall we say. But the planting that we're looking for around the center, we really want to have reflect the native plants of California. Thanks, Lauren. Another question pop up. Go ahead,
Mike,
sorry.
we have 2 more questions in the question and answer. The first one is from John Roberts. It says, all 3 schemes are a single building. Did you consider a set of separate buildings with landscape and outdoor spaces linking them together? If not, why not?
That's a great question, John. Thank you so much. I'm going to turn that one over to our architects if I might, but maybe we'll start with Jim.
Yeah.
Devlin, can I put you on the spot there?
Yes, absolutely. We did consider that. There's this issues of staff being able to view activities taking place in separate buildings. And that was one of the drawbacks to that idea. That was the key one. I don't know if
anybody else from EHDD, either Ryan or Chris?
Yeah, I think Jim summed it up succinctly there. We definitely had a couple options early on where because we wanted to have that conversation with East Bay Parks, like, what do you think about multiple buildings? And so we looked at some of those layouts, but with these types of facilities, as Jim is saying, the management, the security, the access to multiple buildings, it just becomes a burden for staff over time. So we opted for one building, but a couple of the options that we have, the building mass is really broken down into some smaller scales. So we think that a couple of the options can look like a collection of small buildings while functioning as one facility.
Great. Thanks, Chris. That's great. We have another one. Actually, it looks like we have an anonymous attendee who asked about Indigenous community members with input. We'll get to that one in just a moment, but if we can go back to John Roberts' next question about the new bridge, just so we can concentrate on the architectural aspects and the landscape architectural aspects, we'll wrap that up and then we'll get into some of the other questions too. So would anybody like to address the new bridge directly connecting with the new buildings? A wonderful idea. We agree, John. How realistic is that?
I'll take that one on, Mike, as well.
Thanks.
Okay, so it is realistic. There is some work to do. Lauren touched on it. I think Ryan touched on it as well. There's some regulatory and some other issues related to the stream, understanding how the silt bed is managed, and some other technical issues that we need to learn more about. But from a feasibility standpoint regarding cost, as Lauren was saying, to dip down to Wildcat Creek and then make that trail back up to the visitor center and to Little Farm does take quite a bit of grading and quite a bit of work and quite a bit of pathway. So we haven't priced it out yet because we're not in that stage of the project. But currently, we feel that we're pretty close to an equivalency because that bridge is such a direct route and there's a lot less pathway and a lot less accessible pathway construction across the site. But we will look very closely at that as we move forward into more detail with a preferred option. That's literally one of the first issues that we're going to take on in more detail. But we'll be excited to report back as we get some more information at the next meeting.
Great. Thanks, Chris. And then, Amanda, am I correct? We have just the one question left here from our anonymous attendee.
Yes, that's,
and
another one just popped up.
Maybe from the same anonymous attendee. Okay.
Would you like me to read both of those, or?
Would you please?
Yes, please.
Yeah.
Okay. The first one is, how will the parks be working with the indigenous community members if we are going to be highlighting plants important to their communities?
Great. Sarah, federally supervising naturalist at the EEC, could you speak to maybe not necessarily this particular project, but what you've done in the past to get input from indigenous folks?
Yeah, so we have some contractors that work with the park district and help us when we are doing programming where we might be interpreting native culture or discussing native presence on the land. And we bring these people in to make sure that we are representing the community well and saying the right thing and giving these community members a chance to respond and use their own voice to help us educate the public about different things. So we are going to be reaching out with these as well as other community members when we get to that stage of the project. But definitely bringing in Native consultants and working with the Native community to help us create a plan is our vision.
That's great. Thanks, Sarah. And just an example or a sample, I should say, of how the Park District has incorporated Indigenous voices. Probably our most outstanding example is what's happening out at Coyote Hills Regional Park and has been happening there for decades with a very close connection with the Ohlone community. We have an Ohlone contractor program. Folks help us out with input for the very things that Sarah was talking about, providing programming and interaction with the public, with Native peoples themselves telling their own stories. So I really appreciate this question. It's a very important thing, and it's only getting to be more and more at the forefront of interpretation, that telling these untold stories, letting people who have not had their stories told tell their stories themselves. How can we incorporate that, into our interpretive plan, not just in our programming, but also in our exhibits and how the building might inform that. I hope that answers your question. And again, for everybody who was asking questions, they're great questions, lots of great input. If the answers are insufficient, think of another question you want to have answered, please go to that website, our district page, the project page, and ask those questions. And also feel free to email us at East Bay Regional Parks. I'm happy to discuss some of these things. Great. These are really good questions. Really appreciate it. And if, again, I'm just going to reiterate, if something didn't quite answer your question, but it kind of did, that doesn't matter. We want to make sure it's very clear. So please give us the opportunity to provide you with the information you're looking for to help us make this a better project. Great. Any other questions, folks? Any other thoughts?
I'm not seeing any further questions at this time, Mike.
Okay, that's great. So we will start. We're getting ready to close it up here. Let me see. I thought I had a note here about another question, but I don't think we covered those things. Just to let you know, folks, as you see that, the conceptual drawings, the concepts of the different landscape plans, the concepts of our exhibits, that methodical process of going from idea to developing concepts is really so important in this. So what you're seeing here in this meeting is just where we are in the process. And this is, you're trying to gather as much information and distill these great ideas to put into this flagship project. So we're early in the game. We're moving very enthusiastically forward. We're on schedule. And as we mentioned earlier on, there will be another public meeting on the 10th of April. All that information is going to be on the project page. But we really want folks to get involved. And you probably hear that a lot, but we really want you to get involved, and we really appreciate you getting involved tonight to look at this presentation, provide your input. It's a big project. This is the Tilden Environmental Education Center that, as you've learned and it is really an emotional place. There's an emotional connection that all you folks are bringing to this project, to these meetings and such. That's exactly what we strive for in everything we do at the Park District. It's, as I mentioned at the top of the meeting, this is especially appropriate because this is our 90th anniversary, and 90 years of conservation, stewardship, and access, but it's only made possible by public support, public input. We are the ones who are graced with the opportunity to put your visions of a world-class park district into reality. And this project for the EEC, so big, such an important thing. We realize the gravity of it. As you can see, we address the gravity of it with these fine firms, these incredible consultants that we're working with. So please ask your questions, share your thoughts, spread the word around. If you think that other folks might be interested, let them know about the project. We really want to make this project its best for future generations of the East Bay and beyond. And always I'm going to keep hammering on it, get to that input page. We just can't stress enough how important your input is on this incredibly important, exciting, emotional project, just full of potential. So thanks very much, everybody.
Mike, we do have one more question there. It's another one from John Roberts. It says, what is the process of selecting a preferred plan?
Jim, could you take that one?
Sure.
Thanks.
So we're reviewing the 3 plans with the staff, and we're talking with different members of the staff. We're weighing in if there's any strong comments from the community, but the staff of the East Bay Regional Park District will make the final decision, and then we will forward that decision to the board for the board to concur.
Okay. So there is that process, and that process for input will continue. Thanks for that question, John. Anybody else? Any other thoughts? Any of the panel members or hosts tonight have any thoughts or any closing comments? All right. So I'll give you one more plug, folks. Please provide us with that input. Please get involved. Let us know. I think we mentioned earlier on that there are storyboards, or not storyboards, but we have some, the boards still up at the EEC, Sarah? The project boards?
Yes, they are.
They are.
Yes.
And new ones will be coming up probably towards the end of this week.
So for folks who'd like to be in person, seeing things on paper, it's a great opportunity to do that. And you could also speak with the wonderful staff at Tilden if you want to have some interaction, maybe get some questions answered. We don't know exactly when staff's going to be there, but always ask when you come on in. And then we see, there's a QR code. Amanda, can you tell us, or Jim, can you tell us how this actually works?
Well, it works like a QR code that will take you to the Tilden EEC project webpage of the district, where there's that's a place where you can make comments, and it's also a place where you can find resources for the project, videos of previous public meetings and the presentations.
Great.
Can be
Thanks.
found there.
Hey, Amanda,
And
for those, oh, sorry, go ahead, please.
Oh, I was just going to mention if you're viewing this meeting on your computer screen, you can take out your smartphone, go to the photo app and scan the QR code, and then it will pop up with a little box that says EBRPD. You click on that and it'll take you directly to the web page.
Great. All right. Thank you, everybody, for joining us this evening, and thank you to all of our panelists, the fine folks of HDD, APA, and CMG. We're moving along. It's an exciting project, and we're really looking forward to our next steps. Please stay involved. Any way we can help you out to understand and appreciate this project, any way we can get your questions answered, let us know. That's what we're here for. All right, folks. With that, we will call it an evening. Thanks so much to everybody for coming along and joining us.